Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly through the sandstone corridors of an ancient palace, where the walls are cool to the touch and the oil lamps flicker like nervous thoughts. Somewhere beyond the pillars, past the perfumed gardens and murmuring fountains, there's a man sharpening a blade with movements so precise they almost feel sacred. That man is you. And no, you're not a soldier, not a priest, not a prince. You're the royal barber, your hands always steady, always cleaner about to touch the head of a living god. And somehow, in this ancient world teeming with scorpions, curses, and cousin marriage politics, you have become one of the most quietly feared men in all of Egypt. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where are you watching from tonight? What time is it where you are? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before dawn, as usual. The palace is silent except for the distant slap of sandals on stone and the rustle of linen curtains in the morning breeze. Your little chamber smells of cedarwood, frankincense, and something fainter, maybe the fierce sweat of yesterday's close shave. Literally. You light your oil lamp with a practiced flick, still half asleep, and reach for your satchel. Inside, every tool has its sacred place. Bronze razors polished to a gleam, tweezers sharpened just enough to pluck but not draw blood. A pair of delicate scissors with handles shaped like papyrus stalks, each one lovingly wrapped in linen, rubbed daily with oils blessed by temple priests. You don't just groom the Pharaoh, you perform a daily ritual that walks the line between hygiene and holiness. There's a knock. 3 taps. The signal. Time to go. The guards escort you with only a brief nod. They know you, but they never relax around you. No one does. Maybe it's the blades, or maybe it's the knowledge that you're allowed into the Pharaoh's bedchamber when he's most vulnerable, sleepy, moody, and unarmed. And if you slip, just once, if your hand trembles, you could draw blood. Or worse. This morning, as always, you walk past the painted murals, sunboats and jackals, falcons and fields. A depiction of the Pharaoh's father looms over you in profile, one hand holding a crook, the other a flail, his chin sporting a perfectly shaped ceremonial beard. You'll be the one attaching that false beard later, by the way, using beeswax and tiny cords. No pressure. You enter the chamber. There he is, the Pharaoh, reclining lazily on a couch draped in linen so fine it looks like mist. His eyes are half open. He grunts something incomprehensible. You bow low, eyes to the floor. When he finally waves a hand, you step forward and begin. First, the oil warmed gently overnight in a small jar near a brazier. You pour a few drops into your palm and rub your hands together until the room smells like lotus and almond. Then you press your fingers to his scalp, gently massaging the crown of Egypt itself. His hair, what little he allows to remain, is soft from the daily oils. Most of it has been shaved, per custom, but not all. Not yet. You have to keep certain patches, depending on lunar cycles, festivals, and the Pharaoh's personal whims. Sometimes he wants a stripe left down the middle, like a sacred ibis, sometimes just the sides, like a hedgehog of divine power. You massage, you hum quietly. It's part lullaby, part signal. Relax, oh mighty one, your loyal blade is near. Suddenly he speaks. Too much oil yesterday. My scalp itched all night. You freeze, then smile. Forgive me, divine Lord. Perhaps the sandalwood was impure. I will correct it. He grunts again and closes his eyes. Now comes the razor. You hold your breath, not because you're afraid. You've done this hundreds of times, but still, this is not just a man. This is Horus in the flesh. A nick could be considered a bad omen. The court astrologers might see it as a sign of rebellion. And guess whose head would end up in a jar next to the leech's? Yours. The blade sings softly as you pass it along the curve of his skull. His skin is warm and taut, like stretched papyrus. You hold the skin firm with your thumb and glide the razor downward, collecting foam and stubble into a linen cloth. Every stroke feels like part of a spell. Outside, a servant drops a bronze tray. The Pharaoh twitches. Your blade freezes in midair. For a moment, everything in the chamber holds its breath. Then he exhales. You finish the stroke, pretending nothing happened, but your tunic is suddenly damp at the armpits. The tray clumsy servant, you're sure, is already sprinting toward the Nile, hoping exile is still an option. You apply the final rinse rose water and mint, then towel the Pharaoh's head dry with cloth finer than anything your parents ever touched. He waves you off without a word, but as you back away, still in a deep bow, you catch the faintest flicker of amusement on his lips. Did he enjoy watching you squirm? Probably. Was this a test? Maybe. But hey, you're still breathing. That's today's win. As you leave the chamber, the guard at the door gives you a slightly wider berth than before. That's the thing about fear in the palace. It's subtle, but it adds up. People whisper when you pass. They notice how you never carry visible weapons because you are the weapon. You're clean, quiet, and always allowed near the crown. Historians still argue whether barbers like you were part of the official priesthood or operated under a separate guild. Some claim you had to pass temple rites to even touch the pharaoh. Others think barbers were lower-class servants who simply rose by being very, very good with a blade. You don't know the truth. You just know your schedule. Tomorrow, you will attend to the Queen Mother. She's fussier. Demands her temples be shaved in spirals, like the curls of the goddess Hathor. You will also be trimming the ceremonial beards of 3 high priests, which involves hot wax, amber combs, and more incense than a fire hazard. And yes, you'll once again be reapplying that crocodile dung-based sunscreen to the pharaoh's forehead before his sunboat outing. Yes, crocodile dung. Supposedly prevents wrinkles, smells like regret. But for now, your job is done. You return to your chamber, strip off your tunic, and rinse your tools one by one in distilled river water. You do this in silence, as always. Not from reverence, but because you're afraid to speak the wrong word aloud. In a place where ears hide behind curtains and walls seem to breathe, even a barber can find himself under the knife. Funny, isn't it? You hold the blade, yet you're never truly safe from it. You wake again, not long after you fell asleep, because there's shouting in the hallway. Not panicked, not violent, just agitated in that distinct royal court kind of way. That means someone's wig is missing or someone's daughter fainted in the incense room. Either way, not your problem. Not yet. You rise anyway, because today is blade sharpening day. That happens every 5th day, regardless of state affairs or eclipses. The pharaoh might be the divine ruler of both Upper and Lower Egypt, but your razors don't care. They dull all the same. The sharpening ritual is quiet, methodical, even soothing. You sit cross-legged on a reed mat beside the window, letting in the cool air of early morning. Your tools are spread out on a clean cloth. Obsidian shards volcanic glass so sharp it can part a single hair lengthwise. Bronze blades, honed daily. Bone-handled razors passed down from your mentor, who in turn inherited them from his. The whetstone is moistened with lotus water and the saliva of a goat fed only on barley. Superstition? Maybe. but the Pharaoh swears he feels the difference. You're not about to argue. With each pass of the blade over stone, a soft scritch. You imagine yourself whispering to the gods. You don't pray in the traditional sense. No formal invocations to Thoth or Ra, but there's a rhythm to your sharpening that feels close to sacred, as if the blade, when prepared correctly, becomes not just a tool but a whispering reed in the ear of fate. This is the part no one sees, the part they fear without understanding. Because here's the thing, in ancient Egypt, a blade wasn't just for cutting, it was for cleansing, purifying, separating sin from skin. Barbers weren't just stylists, they were ritualists, exorcists in linen aprons. You didn't just trim beards, you banished demons hiding beneath them. Historians still debate whether the barber's role evolved from priestly duties or diverged into its own mysterious class. Some sources claim barbers were among the first temple functionaries, entrusted with purifying high priests before ceremonies. Others argue they were separate entirely, part artisan, part servant, part dangerous anomaly. But no one disputes this. When you carried a blade in Pharaoh's palace, you were watched very closely. You finish the final stroke and inspect the edge. Perfect. Sharp enough to slice a papyrus scroll by breathing on it. You oil the blade lightly, rewrap it in its cloth, and place it back in the satchel. Now you're ready for today's task, the ceremonial headshave of Pharaoh's youngest brother. He's 14, smug, and fully convinced he'll be Pharaoh someday. Spoiler, he won't. You arrive at his chamber and find him surrounded by a cloud of sweet-smelling scribes. They're reading him court gossip while he lounges in an awkward, half-naked sprawl, like a marble statue with attitude. "Ah," he says, spotting you. "The blade man cometh. Do try not to make me look like a monk." You smile politely and begin preparing your cloth. Has been growing out a strange little patch of hair on the back of his head. Claims it brings him visions. You suspect it mostly brings him lice. As you mix the shaving foam goat milk, crushed carob, a touch of salty, you notice the scribe stepping back. One even averts his eyes. It's not you they fear, precisely. It's what you represent. The intimacy of danger. You can get closer to royalty than they ever will, with more trust and more risk. You tilt the prince's head back and begin. The blade glides effortlessly, catching the foam, revealing the pale scalp beneath. He chatters the whole time. They say you know where all the bodies are buried. He smirks. "Tell me, how many people have you accidentally nicked?" You say nothing. Of course, you are, as ever, professionally mute. He chuckles. "What would happen if your hand slipped right now?" Has joking. "Probably," but you pause. Just for a second. Let the silence stretch. Then you tap the blade against the water bowl and say, softly, "Then the gods would have to find someone else to shave you next week." He laughs, a little too loudly. You see his toes curl slightly. There it is again, that fear, that quiet understanding that the person closest to you, physically, might also be the one holding all the power, not by title, but by touch. It's a strange thing, isn't it? You could be executed for speaking too freely, but also celebrated in whispers for how you once saved the Pharaoh from a cursed boil behind his ear. Yes, that happened. No, you don't talk about it. After the prince's head is bare and glistening, you apply a mixture of rosewater and honey. Then you reach for the final step, the anointing. You dab on a salve made from blue lotus and powdered malachite. Supposedly, it keeps evil spirits away. He winces. That burns. You smile. That means it's working. As you pack up your tools, one of the scribes clears his throat. "There's a rumor," he murmurs, that the king of Hadi is sending an envoy. Foreign hair, coarse, untrained. They might ask for a grooming. You nod, saying nothing, but inwardly, you groan. Foreign diplomats are the worst. Always complaining about the razors, wanting extra oils, asking if you do manicures. No, you don't do manicures. That's another department entirely. Still, a royal barber does not refuse such tasks. You'll make it work. You always do. Back in your quarters, you remove your sandals and soak your feet in a basin of cool water. It's the only time your body gets a say in anything. You stare at the wallet, the faint stain from last month's wine accident. A reminder of how close you came to disgrace when a drunk official tried to grab your razor during a feast and ended up with a nicked thumb. He claimed you assaulted him. The Pharaoh overruled him. You wonder if that man is still upset. You wonder if he's plotting. Probably. But again, it doesn't matter. You know how to hold a blade. And more importantly, you know when to hold your tongue. Outside. The sun sets slowly over the Nile. The breeze carries the scent of sycamore and distant fires. You lie back on your woven cot, hands still tingling from the closeness of royal blood. Another day, another shave, another gamble. And tomorrow you'll be sharpening again. The Nile breeze is unusually strong this morning, tugging at the palace banners and stirring the linen robes of the kitchen slaves as they ferry trays of figs and roasted duck past your doorway. You're already up, seated at your low table, crushing blue lotus petals with a pestle. The scent is both intoxicating and calming, like the kind of perfume that makes even pharaohs drift off mid-sentence, which is precisely what you're hoping for today. Because today you're oiling the head of the pharaoh himself, and he's not in a good mood. Rumor has it he lost a favorite hunting dog last night, trampled by a chariot, or stung by a particularly vengeful scorpion, depending on which chambermaid you believe. Either way, today's shave won't be easy. Grief makes the pharaoh pensive, and when he's pensive, he gets fidgety. And when he gets fidgety, well, let's just say the scar on your left thumb didn't come from buttering bread. You scoop the now fragrant mixture into a little alabaster jar, seal it with wax, and slip it into your satchel, along with your finest copper-bladed razor. It's your mood razor smooth, nearly silent, and so shiny that Pharaoh sometimes stares at his own reflection in it instead of asking hard questions like, "Did the priest astronomers lie to me about the eclipse?" You step out into the corridor, and the guards part without comment. Even they look more tense than usual. One of them, a tall one with a broken nose, mutters as you pass, "Gods help you," comforting. When you enter the Pharaoh's chamber, you immediately feel it the weight in the air, like the moment before a summer thunderstorm. He's seated upright for once, not reclined, and his eyes are sharper than obsidian. His jaw moves slightly, chewing nothing. Thinking? You bow deeply. "Do it quietly," he says. "No chatter." You nod, already pouring a few warm drops of oil onto your palm. The blend this morning includes a hint of cinnamon to calm his nerves and maybe distract him with the scent of holiday bread. You begin massaging the mixture into his scalp, slow circles at the temples, working outward. His skin is dry today, tight with stress. You let your fingertips adjust the pressure, easing tension from the muscles beneath. A flick of your wrist, and the blade is ready. He closes his eyes. You shave silently, every stroke deliberate. Your hand is a breath's width from the carotid artery, though you never think of it that way, except maybe now. The Pharaoh's heart beats beneath your fingertips. Each pass of the blade seems to slow it, slightly. And just when you think he's slipped into half sleep, he speaks. They say I'm cursed. You pause mid-stroke. Do they? You reply, gently wiping foam from the razor. The priest of Sobek claims my dreams are infected, a sign I'm losing the god's favor. You make a non-committal hum, a sound halfway between interest and neutrality, the universal language of palace service work. I haven't dreamed of Horus in months. He adds, you switch razors, the finer blade now, less pressure, no room for mistakes. I trust you, he murmurs, because you've touched the back of my skull more than any priest has. A strange honor, but he's not wrong. You finish the shave with a final stroke down the neck, then apply a cooling balm made of honey and mint. The Pharaoh lets out a long exhale, not a sigh, a release. You step back. He opens his eyes. Make me smell less like grief, he says. You reach for a pot of resin-based perfume, stir it with a thin reed, and dab it along the jawline, temples, and behind the ears. It smells of myrrh, amber, and citrus, royal, but not boastful. As you pack up, he speaks again. Do you know the story of Nebuchadnezzar's barber? You pause. Yes. You answer. Of course you do. Everyone in the palace does. The tale goes, Nebu-Ra, a pharaoh from long ago, discovered his personal barber had been bribed to whisper foreign omens into his ear during shaves. The man did this for 2 years. When found out, he wasn't executed. Instead, he was buried alive beneath the palace's shaving room. A reminder, the story goes, that a dull blade cuts no throat, but a clever barber cuts the soul. You don't repeat that out loud. The pharaoh smiles, faintly. Good. Just checking. You leave calmly, even as your heartbeat drums in your ears. Later that day, you receive a gift, a basket of dried dates, almonds, and curiously, a small jar of imported incense labeled for restful sleep. You're not sure if it's a thank you or a warning. The life of a pharaoh's barber is scented with ambiguity. That evening, you prepare a fresh blend of oils. This one's different. It contains marula seed, a foreign ingredient traded from the far south. It's rumored to make dreams return. You don't believe in magic. Not really, but the pharaoh does. You place the jar carefully in your satchel. Tomorrow, you will offer it as a discovery, something you found in the scrolls. Let him believe it's fate. Sometimes, survival is just good marketing. Historians still argue whether barbers in ancient Egypt doubled as early psychotherapists. There's debate over whether the intimate nature of their work allowed them to act as informal confessors, or if that's just romantic modern thinking layered onto old duties. Either way, your hand-soiled and steady have carried the weight of more secrets than most scribes. As you light your chamber lamp that night, the scent of marula and blue lotus mingles in the air. You breathe it in and murmur to the ceiling, sleep well, divine one. Let the blade dream of gentler things tonight. And maybe, just maybe, you will too. The temple bells are already tolling as you duck under the lintel of the side corridor, your satchel thumping lightly against your hip. Today is not about Pharaoh, not directly. Today is about hair, the kind of hair that stirs prophecies, raises eyebrows, and yes, sometimes gets people executed. And no, you're not being dramatic. Because in this strange, sun-drenched world of piety and protocol, hairstyles can mean everything. They speak in the silence between ceremonies. They announce loyalty or rebellion. They can declare someone pure, unclean, pregnant, possessed, or pretending. And for you, as the royal barber, Hair is not just dead keratin, it's evidence, it's communication, and sometimes it's a very dangerous kind of whisper. You've been summoned to the chamber of the chief vizier's daughter. That's unusual. Most women in her rank have their own private hairdressers. For the barber of the Pharaoh to be asked, either a special honor or a test. You hate tests. You arrive at the room, and the vizier's daughter is seated calmly beside a small pool, her feet dipped into the water, arms folded across her embroidered robe, her hair long, dark, elaborately braided, untouched. That in itself is the first clue. You bow. She nods once and says, I want it gone. All of it. You blink. Your Grace, may I ask, is this for a vow? A pilgrimage? She tilts her head. It's for freedom. You glance at the handmaidens in the room. They've already lowered their eyes. So, this isn't an act of religious purity, it's an act of political message. A statement. Hair in ancient Egypt is political theater. For noble women, styles are as coded as scrolls. Elaborate wigs signal fertility, power, or alliance. A partially shaved head might suggest mourning or penance. A fully bald scalp? That's loud. That's a woman declaring she has nothing left to lose or everything under control. You unpack your tools slowly, buying time, obsidian razor, tweezers, scalp oil. Your hands are sure, but your mind is buzzing. There was a courtier last year who shaved his head before accusing a priest of treason. People still debate which act caused more chaos, the accusation or the haircut. You begin with the oils. It's the safest move. The scent of almond and sandalwood fills the air, and the vizier's daughter relaxes a little under your fingers. You know, she says softly, my father doesn't know I asked for you. That's the second clue. This isn't just a fashion choice. This is a message meant for someone important. Maybe even the Pharaoh himself. As you pass the blade across her scalp in gentle arcs, you remember that ancient legend when your master told you during training, the tale of Queen Tia, who shaved her head as a prayer to Sekhmet during a time of plague. They say the next day, the plague ended, and Tia was declared semi-divine. But others whisper a darker version, that the plague didn't end, and Tia's baldness was seen as an insult to the gods. She was buried alive beneath a crocodile shrine. Historians still argue whether the Queen Tia of those stories even existed, or whether the tale was simply a way to control the behavior of noble women who tried to resist tradition through their appearance. The vizier's daughter doesn't flinch as you shave the back of her head. Instead, she stares straight ahead, eyes focused on a small potted papyrus by the window. You'd be surprised, she murmurs, how heavy hair feels when you're expected to carry it like a crown. You nod, not replying. Outside, you can hear the faint chanting from the priests of Thoth. It's a festival day. Soon the Pharaoh will be in procession, riding through the streets in his gold-plated chariot, the sun reflecting off his oiled, shaven scalp. Meanwhile, here you are participating in a different kind of ritual, one far more subversive. You complete the shave in near silence. Then, as is tradition, you anoint her head with sacred balm. This one includes a trace of crushed lotus seed symbol of rebirth. You will not tell him, she says, more a command than a question. You bow. My blades do not gossip. She smiles, just barely. Then you're the only one in this palace who can say that. As you exit, you're intercepted by a palace messenger, as breathless, sweating, and holding a linen-wrapped package. From the high priest, he says, pressing it into your hands before disappearing back into the labyrinth of corridors. You open it later in the privacy of your chamber. Inside, a comb, broken cleanly down the middle. No note, just the comb. You stare at it for a long time, because in temple code, that broken comb means one thing: someone is about to break tradition. Whether it's the vizier's daughter, the pharaoh, or someone else entirely, you'll soon be holding the blade again. And this time, it might not be for grooming. Later that evening, you pass by one of the antechambers and catch a glimpse of yourself in a polished bronze mirror. There's oil on your cheek, a fleck of hair on your collar, and behind your reflection, there's the figure of a palace scribe. Watching you, you turn, but he's already gone. That night, as you clean your razors by lamplight, the silence is heavy. The scent of shaved hair lingers on your hands, and the phrase repeats in your mind, "Make me bald for freedom." You wonder if Shell'll still be alive next week. You return to your quarters late that night, but sleep doesn't come easily. Your scalp tingles with the memory of that broken comb from the high priest. Not because you're superstitious, though after a few years in this palace, even the skeptics start squinting at shadows, but because you know the code. You know that kind of message doesn't get sent to a barber unless someone is about to need a very precise intervention, which means it's time to review your tools. You light a small oil lamp and unroll the linen pouch on your table, the one reserved for what you call your delicate work. Inside is your personal collection, everything not sanctioned for use on the Pharaoh, but useful nonetheless. A thin-bladed sickle razor, a tweezer shaped like a lion's paw, a hook for removing thorns, or if rumors are to be believed, something else entirely. Each piece tells a story. Like the triangular comb once gifted by a Babylonian ambassador, carved from ivory, its teeth uneven and, frankly, unusable, except for hiding a pin-sharp shard of bronze folded inside the spine. A diplomatic gift, they called it. You call it Plan B. Today, though, you're focused on presentation. You've been summoned again, this time for the inventory ceremony. A glorified check-in, really, where court officials verify the state of all items used in proximity to the Pharaoh. Normally it's tedious, but this time, you're being asked to display your entire kit, even the ones that never leave your room. So you polish everything, even the old priestly blade, the one no one's asked to see in years. It has a handle wrapped in woven gold thread and is etched with symbols older than the pyramids themselves. Some believe it belonged to a temple barber who served during the reign of Narmer, the first true pharaoh. Others think it's just a well-preserved fake passed down through generations of nervous stylists like you. Either way, it makes people nervous when you take it out. At the inventory hall, everything is laid out on a long cedarwood table under the scrutiny of scribes, priests, and one particularly sweaty official who smells like date wine and anxiety. One by one, they inspect each item, whispering among themselves, tallying notes on palm paper. "This blade," the priest murmurs, picking up the Narmer razor. "You've used it?" "Once." You answer, "For a funerary shaving." He nods, carefully placing it back. Still balanced. Excellent craftsmanship. You try not to exhale too loudly. The sweaty official steps forward, eyeing your tweezers. These look odd. You smile. Custom made. For extracting eyebrow hairs without irritating the skin? The Queen Mother's very particular. This is technically true, but you don't mention that the same tweezers also double as a lockpick in emergencies, or that once, during a famine riot, you used them to unhook a poison dart trap outside the Pharaoh's emergency chamber. Those are off-the-record skills. Historians still debate just how multifunctional ancient barbers were. Some argue they were little more than glorified valets, while others point to inscriptions that show barbers performing medical procedures, applying ritual tattoos, even whispering guidance to kings in times of crisis. The truth, Probably somewhere in the middle, or in your case, just under the table. You're dismissed after the final nod of approval, but not before receiving a curious gift: a silk wrapped scroll containing a list of names. At first glance, it seems like just another register officials, priests, entertainers, but every third name has a red mark beside it. It's the mark used by the Pharaoh's inner circle to designate high contact, risk individuals who, in the coming months, might be subject to special attention. You recognize three names: two you've shaved before, one you've never met. That evening, you receive a whispered summons. A page boy appears at your door with a single line. Pharaoh requests your presence. Bring your smallest razor. That's never a good sentence. You follow the boy through twisting corridors, past murals of battles long forgotten and rows of incense braziers. You're led to a private garden you've only seen once, years ago, when you were still apprenticing under the last royal barber. The Pharaoh is there, alone, seated beneath a fig tree. His hands are stained with something dark ink, maybe, or blood. Sit, he says, motioning to a stone bench beside him. You sit. He holds out his hand. There's a single gray hair in his palm. Remove it, he says. You reach carefully, but he pulls back. I could pluck it myself, he mutters. But if I do, the priests will say I've disrupted my divine reflection. He stares at the hair. They say gray means my time is slipping. You say nothing, though you're half tempted to say that time slips for everyone, even god-kings who still believe they're invincible. Instead, you retrieve your smallest blade, the obsidian sliver set into a reed handle, and gently scrape away the offending strand from his temple. He closes his eyes. Do you ever think about what happens when I'm gone? You pause. Your blade hovers. I think about what's left behind, you say, and what shape it takes. He chuckles, a dry sound, like sand shifting in a jar, spoken like a man who knows how to carve a legacy. Then he hands you something wrapped in linen, a charm, shaped like a coiled cobra. For protection, he says, or for proof. You accept it, even though you're not sure what it means. Not yet. Later that night, you add it to your satchel, tucked between your rosewood comb and your emergency wax seal, right next to the broken comb from the high priest. You dream of razors that glow in moonlight, of whispers that can be shaved off the back of a neck, of a temple built entirely of hair. And when you wake, your hands are already reaching for your tools. You barely finish breakfast, just a half-stale hunk of barley bread and some diluted date wine when the knock comes. Sharp, official. You don't need anyone to explain. Today's not going to be a simple shave and oil day. This kind of knock has weight behind it, not urgency, exactly expectation. You recognize that rhythm. You open the door and find a palace aide standing there, robed in spotless white linen, hands clasped, eyes not quite meeting yours. His words are simple. Lo, you're summoned. Immediately, as irritable. He doesn't say who he is. He doesn't need to. The Pharaoh doesn't share his mood lightly, and when he does, everyone listens, or ducks. You nod and close the door. You gather your tools quickly, but with care. No shaking hands, no sudden rush. Each movement deliberate, steady. You've done this countless times. Still, as your hand brushes the clasp on your satchel, you pause. You feel it again, that sensation from the day before. The weight of something unspoken, pressing against your ribs like a dull blade. You think briefly of the small cobra-shaped charm Pharaoh gave you, tucked neatly between your bone comb and the roll of beeswax cord. You don't take it with you this morning. No. Today's not the day for silent tokens or mystery gifts. Today feels like the kind of day where everything has to be out in the open. As you cross through the inner palace, your sandals tapping softly against polished stone, you're led down the western corridor, the one the priests avoid, the one decorated with larger than life reliefs of pharaohs trampling enemies under chariot wheels and receiving the ankh of life from Ra himself. Today, the carved eyes of a dozen gods seem to follow you, blinking with judgment. Outside the pharaoh's chamber, something is off. The guards are new, or rather, not the usual two. These men stand straighter. Their spears are better polished, their eyes sharper, the old familiarity gone. Replaced by silent calculation, you give a small bow and are admitted without a word. Inside, the pharaoh is pacing. That right there is a bad sign. He doesn't pace, not unless something's gone sideways politically, spiritually, or violently. Sometimes all three. He moves like a man with too many thoughts pressing against the walls of his skull and not enough room to let any of them out. He sees you. You're late, he says. You aren't. Of course. You know it. He knows it. But you bow low and reply, I beg your pardon. I came as swiftly as summoned. He grunts, sits, and waves for you to begin. His scalp is already oiled sloppily. Someone else attempted to begin without you. That someone is not in the room anymore. You assume they've been reassigned or disappeared. This is not a good omen. I want it smooth, he says curtly. Not soft, not gentle. Smooth. Like Nilestone. You nod and begin with your practiced motions, silently thanking yesterday for sharpening everything to perfection. You massage a small layer of fresh oil into the skin, not too much, just enough to smooth the blades, journey. You feel the tension vibrating under his skin, like a drum stretched too tight. He's clenched, jaw set, body motionless but humming with anger. As you prepare your razor, the midweight copper one, your most trusted, you feel him watching you. He doesn't blink. Then, suddenly, the general from Thebes. Did you hear what he said about me? You don't reply right away. Just 1 second too long. Then, calmly, I hear only whispers. My lord, never words. He exhales hard through his nose. He said I'm aging, weak, that I sleep too often during council, that I hesitate. The blade touches skin. You glide it along the curve of his scalp, each stroke delicate, measured. You adjust your pressure slightly, not because of the words, but because his skin is drier today. Stress. Do I look weak to you? He asks, eyes locked on your reflection in the polished copper mirror across the room. You keep your expression soft. You look powerful. My king. Even time steps cautiously around you. That earns a short laugh, gravelly and sharp, but it breaks the air. A brief release. You let it hang there, continuing your work. The blade slides down the nape of his neck. You wipe it clean on the cloth, rotate the angle. Suddenly, without warning, he jerks slightly to one side. A shift. Not violent, just abrupt enough to catch your wrist mid-stroke. And just like that, the razor jumps. A dot of red appears behind his ear. Tiny, barely larger than a pomegranate seed. But on Pharaoh's skin, it could be a thunderclap. He freezes. So do you. He raises one hand, touches the spot, looks at his fingers, sees the blood. And in that instant, the temperature in the room drops. You remain still, the blade still in your hand. You've made no excuse, no apology. That would be presumptive. That would imply guilt. He watches the blood bead on his fingertip. Then, with a flick of his tongue, he licks it away. Sharper than usual today. He mutters. You breathe again. Historians still debate whether barbers were punished for accidental bloodletting. Some argue it was grounds for instant execution. Others claim pharaohs considered it a sign of spiritual release, a bad spirit cut away. Maybe both are true. Maybe it depended on the mood. Today, you live, you continue, quieter now, every motion exact. When you finish, he does not thank you, he does not look at you, but as you pack your tools, he speaks again. The general from Thebes arrives tomorrow. He says, you glance up. Shall I prepare an oil? Hell ask for grooming. Treat him well. Make him feel respected. You nod. A diplomatic shave. Understood. Then he adds, more softly, if he talks too much, remind him whose hand holds the blade. You pause, then bow deeply. Of course. Later that night, you return to your quarters and sit by lamplight. Slowly rolling a linen cloth between your fingers, you open your satchel. There it is, the cobra charm. Still cool, still curled. You turn it over once, then place it beside your favorite razor. You wonder, briefly, whether tomorrow you'll be a barber again or something else entirely. Because in this palace, your hands hold more than tools. They hold choices, and sometimes consequences. Dawn breaks slowly, flooding the palace in a warm glow that slides over the limestone walls and shimmers across the still surface of the garden pools. Birds wheel in lazy spirals above the eastern towers, and somewhere near the Temple of Bastet, a chorus of priests begins their first chant of the Delo, melodic, vibrating softly beneath the skin of the palace like a second pulse. You're already awake. You didn't sleep much. Not out of fear, no. You've grown used to the coiled tension of your profession. But today, your senses are heightened, alert, focused in that peculiar way they always are before something uncertain. You can't explain it. Not exactly, but there's a weight in the air, a silence between sounds, a rhythm that feels slightly off. You're not shaving the pharaoh today. You're shaving his enemy, or at least a man who may become one. And he knows it. The general from Thebes has arrived. The same general who, according to palace whispers and half-glanced scrolls, had the gall to suggest, however indirectly, that Pharaoh is growing tired, that his grip on the reins of empire may be weakening, that Egypt may need stronger hands. The audacity alone should have had the man trampled under a divine chariot before sunrise. But no. He's been invited, honored, pampered. And today, you've been asked to groom him. That's the official word from Pharaoh himself. You don't need to be a prophet to know what this means. You begin by assembling your kit with extreme precision, not because you plan anything rash, but because in moments like this, everything matters. The blade must be flawless, not just honed, but polished, balanced, reflective. The oils must be subtle, the cloths free of fray. Today is not about hair, it's about messages. And in this court, those are rarely spoken aloud. You choose the copper razor, slightly heavier. Its weight steadies your hand when nerves would try otherwise. You pair it with an oil blend of almond and frankincense, a mixture that soothes the skin, but also sharpens the senses. The fragrance alone is said to stir clarity, appropriate. You step out into the hallway, where light cuts clean geometric shapes onto the floor through the high windows. The garden wing lies ahead, a quieter part of the palace. Visitors are housed there foreign dignitaries, governors from border provinces, high priests too ambitious for their own temples. The general from Thebes has been given a suite overlooking a reflecting pool. This isn't hospitality. This is theater. 2 soldiers flank the entrance, not as men, palace guards. crisp in their pleated linen, eyes forward, expressions blank. They don't nod as you pass, they don't need to. Your presence is expected. Inside, the chamber smells of spiced wine and fresh pomegranate. The general is already seated, half-robed, legs apart, arms thrown lazily along the carved wooden frame of the couch, like he's in his own villa. He exudes comfort, but it's practiced. Every gesture is rehearsed, calculated. This man is performing. "You must be the famous Barber," he says, grinning. His voice is deep, smooth, and just loud enough to let you know he enjoys hearing it echo in wide rooms. You bow. "At your service, General." He gestures toward the table beside him. You'll find him not particular, but I do enjoy a bit of conversation while being pampered. You smile, lips tight. Then he'll let the blades speak softly. That earns a chuckle. "They said you had wit." You begin the standard preparation warm cloth over the face to open the pores and dull any remaining tension. He accepts it with a theatrical sigh, sinking back into the cushions like a man on holiday, but his eyes stay slightly open, watching. Next, the oil. You pour a few drops into your palm and begin massaging it gently into his jaw and cheeks. His skin is different than Pharaoh Star, more sun-worn, lined with years of command. This is a man who's spent time in the field, not just the council chamber. He says, voice low and amused. "I've always wondered what it's like to hold power by the throat, or in your case, by the chin." You don't reply. Instead, you reach for your blade. "It must be strange," he continues, "to know you could end a dynasty with a twitch of your wrist." The copper gleams in your hand as you begin the first stroke across his cheek. "I find dynasties rarely end with a twitch." You murmur. They fade with words, one breath at a time. That makes him pause. He watches you more closely now. "I like that," he says. Very philosophical. You glide the razor with care, each stroke measured. He doesn't flinch, though the blade rests mere millimeters from his jugular. "I imagine Pharaoh trusts you," he adds. "That's rare. Trusting a man with a weapon, daily, when you're at your most exposed." "I am not a weapon," you say softly. "I am a mirror." He smirks. "And what does the mirror reflect?" You rinse the blade, switch sides. Today, a guest. Tomorrow, perhaps, something else. He smiles, but there's a flicker in his eyes now, a glint of calculation. Outside, the breeze stirs the curtains. The scent of blooming lotus drifts in. For a brief moment, everything is peaceful. Almost too peaceful. "You're not afraid of me," the general says, as you shave the underside of his jaw. "I fear dull razors, not sharp men." He laughs genuinely. "This time, tell Pharaoh that I said he's lucky." You finish with the usual salve honey and mint, touched with a trace of resin. Cooling, antiseptic, symbolic. As you pack your tools, he stands, pulls on a clean robe. Then, almost as an afterthought, "Tell him also that I understand restraint. It's a sign of strength." You bow again. He'll pass along your compliments. When you leave, the guards give you no signal, but the palace itself seems to inhale. Back in your quarters, you unpack your kit in silence, lay out the blade, wipe it gently, let it rest on your linen cloth like a sleeping viper. A scribe knocks at your door later, offers a sealed note. One line, "Thebes will not rise." You may keep your charm. No seal, no signature. But the message is clear. The message always gets through. That night, as music floats over the courtyard and incense wafts from the priest's tower, you stare into your polished copper mirror not to check your face, but to consider the man staring back. You shaved a possible traitor today, and you didn't flinch, because here in the palace, blades don't whisper, they listen. The days blur quietly into one another, golden light, polished stone, murmured greetings. No summons arrive, no cryptic messages, no jars of incense wrapped in silk or charms tucked into scrolls, not even a whispered rumor in the washing courtyards. Just silence, which is worse, really, because in a palace like this, silence is never safe. You go through the motions, sharpen, oil, polish, breathe, but you don't relax. Not truly. Not with the aftertaste of that final glance from the general still lingering behind your eyes, and certainly not with the Pharaoh's peculiar phrasing echoing through your mind. Remind him whose hand holds the blade. What exactly was that supposed to mean? By the fourth morning, the Nile breeze is carrying more dust than usual, and you know from the smell in the air that a sandstorm is building far to the west. It's a dry, tense sort of breeze, the kind that makes linen cling and servants fumble their trays. You're just finishing trimming a priest's ceremonial beard carefully to avoid the thick mole he's convinced holds prophetic power when someone knocks. You half expect it to be a page boy, flustered and out of breath, but instead it's a servant you don't recognize. Young, blank-eyed, clearly new. He doesn't meet your gaze when he speaks. You're requested, and a chamber of Mott. Immediately, you freeze, razor in hand. The priest in the chair stiffens slightly. That room is not used lightly. You rinse the razor in silence, offer the priest a small nod, and excuse yourself. You don't need to ask why. You already know someone is testing the scale. The antechamber of Mott is not part of the normal palace tour. It's tucked behind one of the older wings, past the Hall of Judgments and beneath the painted relief of the goddess with her feather crown and outstretched wings. No one enters that room unless they're being measured. You walk the long corridor with slow, even steps. The murals along the walls show pharaohs receiving blessings, enemies groveling beneath sandals, jackals devouring lyres. You keep your eyes forward. When the door opens, you are greeted not by guards, but by 3 seated men, a priest, a scribe, and unexpectedly a palace magician. That's when your spine tightens. These are not barbershop clients. These are interrogators who smile gently, speak softly, and never ask the real question out loud. There is a stool in the center, empty, waiting. You bow, slow and deep. The priest speaks first. You are summoned to verify balance. You nod. Then the scribe begins. Who have you attended to this week? You list the names. The general from Thebes is last. What did he say? The magician asks. You hesitate not from fear, but because you know how these games work. Words matter. Too much truth can hurt more than lies. He complimented Pharaoh's restraint. You reply carefully. Restraint. The scribe repeats, scribbling the word with exaggerated precision. Did he offer you anything unusual? No, you say. Just his face. They let the silence stretch. You know better than to fill it. Then the priest gestures to the stool. You must be shaved, he says, as if offering you tea. You pause, just for a breath. Then you remove your headdress and sit. A blade is unwrapped in front of you, sealed in wax. Fresh. Untouched. It gleams under the filtered light from the high windows. The priest oils your scalp with a touch far gentler than yours. You feel the thin trickle of aloe sliding down your neck. The magician murmurs a blessing under his breath. You do not flinch as the blade glides over your skin, but you do notice the moment the scribe pauses mid-note. You feel the priest's fingers hesitate right at the base of your skull. He presses softly. just once, then continues. When the shave is finished, he dabs your skin with a cloth soaked in mint and vinegar. It stings. You welcome it. The priest speaks once more. Balance has been affirmed. You bow again, rise, and leave. You don't speak until you're halfway back to your chamber, because you were not shaved for tradition. You were shaved for trust. Historians still debate the antechamber's true purpose. Was it a religious rite, a cleansing, or a political litmus test dressed in ritual? Some argue it was symbolic proof that no one, not even the most sacred blade holder, was above the divine scale. Others claim it was darker, a room where loyalty was inspected at the root of the hair. You reach your quarters just as the sun climbs fully overhead. You unroll your cloth, clean your razors one by one. Then comes the second surprise. A new summons this time to the Queen Mother's courtyard. Private. Unscheduled. When you arrive, she's seated in her usual place beneath the sycamore tree, fingers weaving a garland of white lotus stems. Her scalp is already freshly shaved, glinting faintly with gold powder, but you're not here for her. Beside her stands another woman, tall, veiled, silent. You recognize her eventually, one of Sekhmet's priestesses, or rather, formerly. She had influence once, rumors say. Then, silence. She needs to be purified, the Queen Mother says, not looking up. You nod. The priestess sits on a low stool. Her hands rest in her lap, but loosely bound with prayer beads. Decorative, not restrictive. You kneel, unpack your tools. The oil you choose is simple, just mint and aloe. Calming, familiar. You apply it gently to her scalp, fingertips careful not to linger too long. She doesn't move, doesn't blink, but you see the pulse fluttering in her throat. You take your blade, the same copper one used on Pharaoh, the same used on the general, and you begin. Each stroke is slow, methodical. Her hair falls in soft waves, pooling in her lap like unraveling stories. You don't speak, neither does she, but your hands say things you cannot. I see you. I know you're not here by choice. I will be careful. When it's done, you anoint her scalp with a balm made from ground, lotus seed and honey, traditional, symbolic, useless. The Queen Mother stands. Thank you, she says simply. And that's it. No gifts, no nod, no secret message. Just a woman, newly shaved, walking back into silence. As you leave, the wind picks up. The sandstorm is coming. You can smell it. That night, as the windows rattle and the lamps flicker in their sconces, you wrap your blade in fresh linen. You sharpen it just enough to glint in low light. Because lately, it seems, the blade isn't just for grooming. It's for witnessing. And sometimes, for surviving. The wind has not stopped. For 3 full days, the sandstorm presses against the palace like an angry, unseen beast. Curtains slap against carved pillars. Doors creak on their hinges. Even the stone walls seem to groan, as if Egypt herself is bracing for something. No sun pierces the dust-filled air, just the rustling of dry palm fronds and the low mutter of priests, reciting protective verses behind closed doors. Inside, the atmosphere shifts. Laughter disappears. Conversations drop to murmurs. Footsteps become softer, measured. Servants carry themselves lower, heads bent. Even the cats, the real rulers of the palace, have gone scarce, disappearing into storage rooms and high alcoves, far from prying eyes. And you? You wait. No summons, no scrolls, not even idle gossip from the laundry court, just an uneasy quiet. interrupted only by the whisper of dust crawling through the lattice windows and the faint scent of smoke wafting from the incense burners, anxious, overused. You clean your tools again, for the third time today. The razors are already sharp, the oil's already mixed, the linen cloths folded into perfect squares. You polish the combs anyway, hands moving from habit, mind not quite still. You keep the cobra charm nearby, not because you expect anything, but because you'd rather have it close when something does come. And something is coming, you feel it. By the morning of the fourth day, the storm begins to die. The wind softens into an unsettled hush. Dust settles like fine powder on every surface. The sky, though pale and tired, finally returns to blue. A few brave servants emerge with brooms and buckets, beginning the slow, careful sweep of sand from the inner courtyards. No one speaks unless they have to. Even the laughter of the fountain in the courtyard sounds muffled, hesitant. It's mid-morning when the knock finally comes. You open the door to find not a page boy, not a messenger, but a priest. Not just any priesta high priest, unmistakable in his dark indigo robes lined with silver stitching, his staff carved with the sacred symbols of Anubis. His sandals are clean despite the storm, and he carries himself with the kind of authority that makes people speak in half sentences and never make eye contact. He doesn't introduce himself, doesn't offer a reason. He simply says, "You are summoned. Temple of Anubis. Now." You blink. The Temple of Anubis? That's not where hair is cut. That's where the dead are prepared. Still, you say nothing. Just nod and begin gathering your things, selecting tools carefully, almost instinctively. A smaller razor, your cleanest linen, a jar of myrrh oil you'd set aside for ceremonial use. You leave behind your more delicate blades. Somehow, you know this isn't about artistry. The priest leads you without another word. You pass through rarely used corridors, ones you haven't walked in years. The air grows colder the deeper you go. Frescoes along the walls shift from images of abundance and harvest to images of scales, feathers, and jackal-headed gods. You're beneath the palace now, beneath the politics, beneath the surface. The temple is a quiet place, not grand, not glowing with golden gemstones like the main sanctuaries. It's austere, built from older stone, darker. The floor is cool underfoot, worn smooth from centuries of solemn footsteps. You are led to a small sanctum behind the central chamber, a hidden room, more chamber than temple, lit by a single oil lamp that flickers against a canopy of hanging linen. And there, seated in lotus posture upon a low dais, is Pharaoh, alive, bare-chested, silent, unmoving. His face is paler than usual, jaw clenched, eyes half-lidded. His arms rest loosely in his lap, palms open. He is breathing but slowly, purposefully. You hesitate. He is surrounded by two figures, one scribe, one priest. A magician stands in the corner, murmuring something you can't quite catch. Old language, older than this temple, older than some of the gods still carved into the walls. The priest who brought you steps forward and speaks softly. The transition must be clean. You will prepare him. You say nothing. Just kneel. Unwrap your cloth. Lay out the blade. It is not a full shave today. This is not for vanity, not for ritual beauty. This is the line of departure, a sacred cut. One thin stroke from the crown of the skull down to the base of the neck, symbolizing the severance of mortal burden from divine essence. It's a rite spoken of in scrolls, practiced by the high temples, performed rarely and only for those stepping beyond the realm of man. Some believe it is done upon death, others upon rebirth. You choose a blade you rarely use, bone-handled, flat-edged, sharpened not just for skin but for symbol. You breathe once, twice, then step forward. The Pharaoh does not flinch. You part the oiled scalp, line your thumb along the ridge, and draw the blade in a clean, perfect motion down the midline. The skin does not break. The silence does. He exhales slow, shaking. A tear escapes from one closed eye. The priest catches it in linen. No one says a word. You step back. He will not speak again for 3 days. They tell you he's not to be touched, not to be seen. He's undergoing the rite of separation, the crossing between Pharaoh the man and Pharaoh the divine. His voice, the priest murmurs, belongs now to the gods. When he speaks again, it will be with new weight. You pack your tools. But before you turn to leave, Pharaoh opens his eyes for a moment, just a flicker of recognition. His lips barely move, but you hear it. When I wake, it begins. Then he closes them again. What begins? You don't ask. Because even if you asked, he wouldn't answer. Even if he did, you might not want to know. Back in your quarters, the silence follows you like a shadow. You don't sleep that night. Not because you're afraid, but because you're awake in the same way a razor's awake when it's placed on the edge of a jugular. You don't clean your tools tonight. You simply lay them out, like a priest laying out offerings, because something is coming, and you will be the first to touch it. You are summoned just before sunrise, long before the first incense burners are lit, before the scribes begin their chanting in the temple corridors, and before the court musicians pluck the days, opening notes into the air. The sky outside is barely a bruise-colored streak over the horizon, and a thin mist curls through the palace courtyard like breath held too long. The summons is brief, not even spoken aloud, just a strip of papyrus, left outside your chamber door. 2 words. He wakes. That's all. You don't hesitate. You don't question. You simply reach for your satchel and begin your ritual. The quiet folding of cloth, the careful selection of oils, the tightening of razor straps. The tools aren't just sharp, they're familiar, trusted. Every line etched into the bone-handled razors is as familiar as your own reflection. This time, you don't bring the scented blends. You leave behind the almond and lotus, the sandalwood meant to calm nerves or impress a royal guest. Instead, you pack plain myrrh oil and a small jar of cedar ash, purification blends, rites of passage blends. You don't need anyone to explain what's happening. The Pharaoh has completed his withdrawal, the sacred silence that separates man from God. Ruler from mortal end, now he returns. You remember the way he looked 2 days ago, seated in perfect stillness, his voice nearly gone, his skin stripped of all decoration. You'd made the cut yourself. The ritual line down his crown, the line of departure. They call it in old temple tongue. The path by which the soul finds its throne. And now, that soul has come back. Or so they say. You're led to the inner chamber again, this time through the east corridor, past the mural of Ra sailing his sunboat through the underworld. The guards don't speak to you. One of them you've known for years. He usually smiles or nods. Today he stares straight ahead, eyes hollow. Inside the chamber, it's dimly lit. No grand fanfare, no gathered priests. Just Pharaoh, seated upright, bare-chested, cloaked in a simple linen wrap. No gold, no jewelry. Even the usual scent of frankincense is missing. Only the air remains cool, dry, still. He looks different, not in body, but in presence. The way shadows bend around him, the way the silence thickens when you enter. He opens his eyes slowly and studies you. For a moment, nothing is said. Then, voice hoarse but steady, he asks, "Do I still look like myself?" You consider your answer, then nod. You look quiet, but whole. A pause. "I don't want to look like a statue," he says, turning his gaze toward the far wall. "I've seen too many pharaohs made into stone before they were dead." You understand instantly. He wants this to be real, alive, not ceremonial. You step forward, unwrap your tools. No one else is present now. No scribes, no priests, no whispering advisors to record the words exchanged. Just you and him. You begin with warm cloth. Press it gently to his brow. Wipe away the temple dust. You notice his skin is drier than usual. Paler. The 3 days of fasting have left their mark. But he's strong. The stillness in him is not weakness. It's something heavier. You press the cloth along the sides of his scalp, slow and circular, as if cleansing not just his skin, but his memory. There was a dream. He murmurs. I stood before a black gate. It didn't open. It watched me. You say nothing. Just continue dabbing the oil onto your fingers. Myrrh. Bitter and ancient. I asked the gate what I was supposed to become. He continues. It didn't answer, but I heard the wind whisper one word. What word? You ask softly. He meets your eyes. Balance. You nod. It is always about balance in this palace between man and God. Strength and fear, blade and silence. You lift the razor. He doesn't flinch. You make a single deliberate pass across his temple, not because there is hair to remove, there isn't, but because ritual requires motion, and motion grounds the spirit. You switch hands, trace the line again on the other side. He closes his eyes. When I returned from the desert trial as a boy, he says, the old high priest told me I had brought something back with me, that the gods had followed me home. Did they, you ask? Brushing away a loose flake of dried oil. I think they're still deciding. He replies. You apply a final touch-a-dab of cedar ash at the base of his neck, meant to absorb remaining spirits. You smooth it with the flat of your finger. Then, silently, you lay the razor down. He opens his eyes. I will need your hands, he says quietly. In the days to come, you bow your head. Not for shaving, he adds. For seeing. That puzzles you. But you don't ask. Not here. Historians still argue whether barbers in the Pharaoh's inner circle held a deeper ceremonial role. Some claim they served as living symbols of transition, midwives for the soul, witnesses to the change between flesh and legacy. Others believe they were simply observers, trusted for their silence. You think it's both. You finish the final strokes. Pharaoh rises slowly, not weakly, deliberately. He walks toward the window slit and stares out at the rising sun. The light paints his face in gold. You may go, he says, but stay ready. You pack your tools, but before you leave, he says one more thing. Tomorrow, we begin the shaving of names. That phrase jolts you. You've only heard it once before. Long ago. In a story whispered among young apprentices, the shaving of names. It is not a ritual of grooming. It is a ritual of removal, erasure, punishment, and power. Back in your quarters, you unwrap a special cloth. One you haven't touched in years. It's marked with red thread and a single glyph, the symbol for silence. You oil your razors again, not because they're dull, but because you need them ready for something. Sharp. Tomorrow, you will not be shaving heads. You will be shaving legacies. You've never heard the palace this quiet, even in the pre-dawn hours before the first incense is lit, before the courtyards come alive with the soft rustle of linen and the slosh of morning basins. There's always been a rhythm to the place, a heartbeat, but not today. Today, it's as though the entire palace is holding its breath, waiting for something to begin, or perhaps to end. You sit at your low table in the half light of your chamber, polishing a copper razor that doesn't need polishing. You've been doing that a lot lately, cleaning things that are already clean. But this morning, you're not reaching for distraction. You're waiting for a knock, and you know exactly what kind. Because yesterday, the Pharaoh told you, tomorrow, we begin the shaving of names. You remember hearing that phrase once, long ago, whispered during your apprenticeship like a campfire story meant to frighten the new recruits. A ritual that wasn't about grooming, but about erasure. You'd half dismissed it as folklore, a dramatic tale passed down through the years to scare young barbers into respecting their razors. But now it's very real. And you're not the scared apprentice anymore. You're the one holding the blade. The knock comes, not soft, not timid. 4 firm raps measured, controlled. You rise without a word, collecting your satchel and slinging it over your shoulder. At the door stands a guard you don't recognize. That in itself is unusual. You've known nearly every palace guard by sight for years, shaving their officers, overhearing their gossip. This man is younger, stiff-backed, and pale-eyed. He says nothing, just gestures for you to follow. You pass through the south corridor, usually bustling with clerks and scribes. Today it's empty. Every torch burns lower than usual, the air thick with smoke and the faint, metallic scent of iron and stone dust. They lead you through the Hall of Ancients. You try not to look too closely at the murals here. Each one depicts pharaohs of old performing rituals, casting judgment, speaking to gods. But as you pass, something catches your eye. One mural lower than the rest. Nearer to the floor has been scraped clean, not worn by time, erased. Deliberately, you don't ask why. You already know. You are escorted down a narrow flight of steps to a chamber behind the scribe's archive. Not a place of beauty. It's plain windowless, square, and lined with stone benches worn smooth by generations of bodies too tired or too frightened to stand. Inside are 3 figures, a priest, a royal scribe, and a guard, and one man sitting shirtless on a bench, hair overgrown, expression unreadable. You don't recognize him, but that's the point. There's no introduction, no ceremony, no explanation. The scribe nods toward you. Begin. You unwrap your cloth, lay out your tools on the stone slab, choose the medium weight razor, balanced, quiet. You step toward the man, whose eyes remain unfocused, fixed somewhere behind you. He doesn't resist. He simply sits still. You dip your fingers into a bowl of barley oil mixed with crushed myrrh, traditional, purifying, symbolic. You rub the oil into his scalp with slow, even motions. He closes his eyes. Then, with a practiced grip, you raise the blade and begin. The razor glides silently. His hair falls in soft tufts to the floor, gathering around his feet like gray feathers. Each stroke is precise, clean. You're not just shaving him, you're removing him. When you're done, you wipe his head with a clean cloth. The priest steps forward and places a thin cord of black thread around his neck. The scribe marks something on a scroll. The man rises and walks out without a word. Gone. You repack your tools. Expect to be dismissed. Instead, the scribe hands you another scroll. Not instructions. A list. 5 names. You recognize 4. One is a palace historian. One is a high-ranking concubine from a rival noble house. One is the master of Pharaoh's stables. One your stomach twists is your former mentor. The last name you don't know. But it doesn't matter. The priest speaks. You will perform them all. Today. You nod. Lips dry. Throat silent. Back in your chamber. You lay the list on the ground and unroll it like a map of memory. Your eyes keep falling on your mentor's name. You haven't seen him in years. He trained you. He taught you how to hold a blade without gripping it too tightly. Tension, he said, causes tremors. He taught you how to listen when someone's silence was louder than their words. He taught you how to watch. You arrive at the same chamber 2 hours later. Your eyes are dry, your hands steady. The first person arrives, the palace historian. She does not cry. She simply sits. You anoint her head. Shave her in silence. The hair comes away easily. She thanks you before being led away. Her voice is trembling. Next comes the stable master, angry, muttering, lies. He whispers as you approach, all lies. But he sits. You shave him quickly. He does not thank you. The concubine refuses to look at you. She's young, beautiful. You recognize her from a past festival where she wore emerald beads in her hair and laughed at nothing. Today, she's silent. You do your work gently. When it's time for your mentor, he arrives alone. You look up and he smiles. Of course he does. You always had the steadiest hands. He says, you say nothing. Your mouth doesn't trust itself. He sits without fuss. As you rub the oil into his scalp, he hums a lullaby, an old song from the South, the kind the washerwomen used to sing while scrubbing linens in the Nile. You start the shave. His hair is finer than you remember. Thinner. He doesn't flinch, just watches you with calm, unblinking eyes. You never let your blade rush. He murmurs. Even now, you finish the final stroke. Then he leans forward, gently clasps your wrist, and says, don't forget me. You don't answer. He leaves. Quietly. By dusk, your tools are cleaned. The scroll is empty. You sit alone in your chamber. You don't eat. You don't sleep. You just stare at your hands. Because today you didn't groom. You erased. You didn't make anyone beautiful. You made them disappear. And still the blade is clean. You wake before the sun. Again. Not from noise, not from dreams. Simply because your body no longer trusts the dark. Rest is a fragile thing now. You lie there for a moment, eyes open, staring up at the slow-moving patterns of shadow cast by the oil lamp you left burning overnight. The smell of old cedar oil still lingers in the room, mixed faintly with linen dust and something sharper and metallic. Faint, but unmistakable. You rise, swing your feet over the edge of the cot, and sit. There's no knock this morning. No summons slid under the door. But you know it's coming. You feel it in your hands, in the way the air sits too still, in the fact that your fingers are already reaching for your satchel before your mind even tells them to move. You unfold your tools slowly. The razors lie there in neat rows, gleaming softly in the dim light. Some of them you've used hundreds of times. One of them, your mentor's old bone-handled blade you haven't touched since yesterday. You run your thumb gently over the edge, still sharp, still dangerous in all the quiet ways a blade should be. And then the knock comes. Not a command, just 4 slow taps. When you open the door, it isn't a soldier, it's a scribe. You recognize him. Young, wide-eyed, not built for intimidation, but he holds a scroll in both hands like it's something holy. He doesn't speak, just bows and offers it. You take the scroll, unroll it, and read a single sentence written in red ink. Scriptorium. Shaving required. Eyes open. You don't ask questions. You've learned not to. The scriptorium is a wide, low-ceilinged chamber where scribes spend hours hunched over papyrus and reed pens, copying texts from worn scrolls into new ones, preserving the thoughts of the dead for the use of the living. Normally, you wouldn't be summoned here. Barbers don't belong in places of ink and knowledge, but these are not normal days. You pack your simplest kit, nothing ornate. No ceremonial oils or sharpened obsidian. Just the tools for a clean, efficient shave. The kind of shave meant to prepare someone for a change they didn't ask for. As you walk through the empty corridors, you notice more gaps on the walls, places where murals once were. You spot one niche where a statue clearly stood, now gone, its absence marked only by a cleaner patch of stone. They're not just shaving names anymore. You think they're shaving symbols. You arrive at the scriptorium. Inside, 3 men sit on mats, their writing hands ink-stained, scrolls coiled loosely at their sides. 2 glance up when you enter. The third, your client, does not. He sits slightly apart, hunched, his hair too long for court protocol. You recognize him. You've shaved him before. Once, long ago. He was nervous then, too. But now there's no fear in him. Just stillness. You kneel behind him and begin preparing the oil. He speaks before you touch him. They've started redacting texts, he says, voice flat. You pause, then resume your work, dipping your fingers into cedar oil mixed with crushed lotus clean. Traditional, the old parables, he continues. The records of court decisions, the scrolls about foreign treaties. They're cutting lines out, sometimes entire passages. You apply the oil to his scalp, moving gently, slowly. They say it's for clarity, he says. Too much confusion, too many versions of the truth. You take up your blade. And now, I suppose, he adds, they're shaving scribes. You make the first stroke down the middle of his scalp. Clean. Even, he doesn't move. You remembered the boy who wrote the hymn to Ras Morning Flame, he asked quietly. They burned it, said it lacked theological precision. You say nothing. You keep shaving. Hair falls into his lap like feathers. Outside the scriptorium window, the sun is rising. Pale gold creeps across the floor, and for a brief moment, you wonder how many truths will vanish before the day is fully lit. You finish your work and wipe his head clean with a strip of linen. He doesn't thank you. He simply gathers his scrolls, ties them with red thread, and walks out. The other scribes keep writing. As you pack your tools, the head scribe approaches you, his old, bent, but sharp-eyed. He hands you a sealed clay tablet. You break the seal later, in your chamber. Inside is a sliver of papyrus. Just one line. Some truths must be erased to survive. You stare at it for a long time, then burn it. Later that afternoon, you're summoned again. This time to the temple of Thoth, the god of writing, knowledge, memory. You expect silence, but instead, there's chanting, low rhythmic. A line of acolytes stands barefoot outside, heads bowed. 2 children kneel at the temple threshold, waiting. Initiates. You're told to shave them. You are cleansing the vessel, a priest murmurs. Before the first scroll is written, the children look terrified. You shave them gently, carefully, the way you once were shaved. Long ago, when you are done, the priest marks their heads with a symbol of ink. A feather, symbol of truth. You wonder if they'll wear it long. That night, you sit at your work table and spread your blades across the linen cloth. Then, for the first time in weeks, you pull out a scroll of your own. It's blank. You think about writing down the names of the ones you shaved, but you don't, not yet. You light a lamp, place your razor beside it, and wait for the next line to disappear. Today begins differently. There's no scroll tied in red thread, no nervous scribe bowing at your door, no summons carved in dried ink, nothing. Instead, it's the silence that wakes you, but not the peaceful kind. This silence hums with weight, thicker than a robe, colder than the stone floor beneath your feet. It wraps around your ankles as you sit up in bed and presses on your chest as you glance toward the shuttered window. The palace, usually breathing with early morning rhythms, footsteps in the halls, servants whispering in the shadows. The soft scrape of sandals on the marble is completely still. Still in that way you now recognize not as calm, but as a warning. You rise slowly. You've learned not to rush in the quiet moments. In this place, movement can be louder than speech. You light a lamp and sit by your tools. The razors are already clean, oiled, sharpened, wrapped in linen as neatly as the first day you received them. You don't touch them yet. They've had enough work, and so have you. Then, as expected, there's a voice outside your door. Not a knock, not even a whisper. Just 4 words, spoken so quietly they sound like breath. Come palace roof, alone. You know that voice. A guard, not one of the brash younger ones, but a seasoned man, quiet, deliberate. You've shaved him before. He always tips his head slightly to the left without realizing it. Nervous habit. Not that he seems nervous today. You don't ask questions. You don't pack your tools. You just step outside, barefoot. The hallway is dim and deserted. The light from the high window panes falls like stripes on the walls. You walk softly over the stone floor, each footstep echoing just enough to remind you that no one else is moving. It's like walking through the spine of a sleeping animal but still, you pass through familiar corridors, past murals you no longer look at closely, past doors that once held laughter, argument, ritual, all shut, all sealed. As you ascend the staircase toward the roof, you remember the first time you were summoned to the upper terrace. You were barely out of apprenticeship. A foreign prince wanted to be shaved in full sunlight, so he could feel Ra watching. He kept flinching every time the wind blew. You had to brace his head with both hands. You nicked him once, just barely, and still felt guilty for a week. Today, there will be no flinching. At the top step, the air shifts. Warm, but not heavy. You step out onto the rooftop, and there he is. Pharaoh, standing alone, facing east, where the Nile glows like a golden ribbon under the early sun. His silhouette is still and upright, wrapped in white linen. No headdress, no adornments, just a man on a high ledge. You walk to his side, not too close. He doesn't turn to look at you. I've been thinking about the Ij, he says. You wait. He continues, voice quiet but sure. How far it is. How close I am. How easy it is to cross without knowing. His eyes are fixed on the horizon. The wind tugs gently at his linen robe. I had a dream last night, he says. I was walking down the Nile, but it was flowing backwards. Everyone around me kept marching forward, smiling, waving, as though everything was normal, but I knew it wasn't. I was the only one facing the truth. You glance at him. He's not trembling, not sweating, But there's something in his voice and edge, a worn place where the fabric of confidence has started to fray. I've ordered so many names erased, he says. Watched the walls go blank. Felt the palace grow quieter. But now I wonder, he turns to you. Have I shaved too far? You meet his eyes. They're not the eyes of a god. They're the eyes of a man trying to see past himself. I don't decide how far. You say. He gives a small smile. No. But you know when the blade is dull. Or too sharp. A pause. I need someone who sees. The sun rises a little higher, bathing the palace below in amber. Boats drift like beetles across the water. The city stirs markets creak open. Smoke rises from the bakeries. But up here, it feels like the world is paused, holding its breath, watching what you and Pharaoh will do next. I've become a shape I no longer recognize, he says. Too smooth, too polished, shaved into something holy, something distant. He looks at his hands. People see the cobra, the crown, the staff, but they don't see me. You say nothing, because you do see him. You've seen every line on his face, every scar beneath the robes, every tremor in his jaw before a ritual, every silence behind his words. He steps closer. I want to go before the priest tonight, he says. But not as Pharaoh. You raise an eyebrow. Then as who? He looks at you and says, as what's left. He breathes. I need you to help me become that. You understand. Tonight, you will not shave a ruler. You will unmake one. You both stand in silence a little longer. Then he says, tonight, no oils, no rituals, just water, and your hand. And then, like that, he leaves. No orders, no guards, just a man stepping down from a high place. That night, when he returns, he comes alone. No servants, no guards, no priests trailing behind him like shadows. He walks barefoot into your chamber and sits cross-legged on the mat, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes calm. He looks lighter. I'm ready, he says. You don't speak. You heat water over the low brazier, dip a cloth, gently press it to his scalp. No perfumes, no ceremony, just warmth. You wash him slowly, every motion a letting go. You clean the oils of state, the dust of marble floors, the flakes of old coal still clinging beneath his lashes. Then you reach for the razor. You choose the one with the worn handle, the one you used when you first shaved him years ago, before he was crowned. It feels right. You begin. Each stroke is deliberate. You remove the lines of divinity the priest drew on his crown, the symbols carved into his hairline by belief, the geometry of legacy, gone. You uncover the man, a scar behind the ear, a freckle at his jawline, a wrinkle at the corner of his mouth. He doesn't speak, and neither do you. You finish. Wipe his skin clean with a plain cloth. He touches his scalp, feels the bareness, looks in the bronze mirror, and for the first time, he smiles without armor. Thank you, he says. He stands and leaves, not as Pharaoh, not yet as anything else, but truly, for the first time, as himself. It's late now. The palace, once teeming with whispered errands and restless motion, has gone completely still. You felt silences before, the sharp-edged silence of execution, the muffled hush of forbidden names, the gentle quiet of private grief. But tonight's stillness is different. It feels reverent, like the entire palace has taken one deep breath and is waiting, lungs full, for something sacred or terrible to begin. You sit alone in your chamber. The low lamp flickers. Its small flame bends toward the doorway as though drawn to something you can't yet see. Your tools lie on the mat beside you, arranged out of habit, even though you weren't summoned tonight. You've grown used to the rhythm of command, the scroll under the door, the step in the corridor, but this evening, nothing. And yet, you are not at ease. Your hands keep hovering over the razors, not to polish them, not to sharpen, just to be near them. They are the last familiar things you trust. Then comes the voice, a low murmur beyond the curtain. Female, precise, and too calm to be anything but official. You are summoned. Come to the court of divine order. Bring nothing. You rise, instantly, silently. There's no pause to pack your satchel. No time to wrap the razors or mix the oils. Somehow, that none of that will be needed tonight. You step into the corridor barefoot. The floor is cooler than expected. The walls echo nothing, not your steps. Not the usual rustle of servants. Not even the creak of distant doors. You walk as if underwater, and the palace around you feels like a ruin pretending not to be broken. The court of divine order sits on the eastern edge of the palace. It is rarely visited, even by the most highborn. Its stone pillars are older than any memory, its reliefs carved by hands long forgotten. You've never been summoned here, not even to trim the beard of a high priest on festival days. It is a place reserved for law beyond questioning, for rituals no longer spoken aloud. As you approach, you see that the doors are already open. Inside, 4 figures wait. You recognize them at once: the high priestess, the vizier, the scribe of records, and him, Pharaoh. But something has changed. He does not wear the crown, no lapis in his hair, no cobra on his brow. His robe is plain, almost humble, dyed the color of river sand, and his feet bare. He looks at you with a softness you've never seen in him. He gestures for you to come forward. You obey. No words are spoken as you kneel. Then he begins. I've summoned my recorders, my advisors, my witnesses. He says, because tonight I am choosing to end something. You remain still. I will no longer reign, he says, his voice steady. I release the throne. A murmur stirs the vizier's throat, but he swallows it. Even the scribe flinches, though he keeps writing. I cannot govern what I no longer believe in. Pharaoh continues. Not with clarity, not with peace. The gods may mark me as coward or sage, it does not matter. I am done being worshipped as a shape I no longer wear. He turns to the scribe. Write the words. The scribe unrolls a fresh scroll and begins. I, Pharaoh of the 2 lands, living vessel of Ra, ruler by divine right, do here relinquish my kingship. I step down not for war, nor sickness, nor rebellion, but by my own hand and breath. The ink is thick and black, every word recorded with precision. You watch the letters dry on the page like the final lines of a story you didn't realize was ending. Then Pharaoh turns to you. I need you, he says, to finish what began when I first sat on the throne. You shaved me to become a god. Now shave me back into a man. You nod. Slowly. They prepare the altar though tonight. It holds no blood, no symbols, only a basin of water and a mirror. He kneels before you, bowing his head. The final shave. You do not reach for a blade. Not yet. First, you wash his head. With water warmed just slightly, laced with nothing to oils. No herbs. Only the element as it is. You press the cloth to his scalp gently, and he exhales like he has been waiting for this breath all his life. Then you unwrap the razor, the old one, the first blade you ever used on him, the one that drew the smallest cut above his ear when he was first crowned. Though he never mentioned it, You begin to shave. Not much hair remains, has already worn the crown so long that his scalp remembers its weight. But this isn't about removing hair. It's about removing legacy. You scrape away what the gods painted onto his skin. You undo what ceremony once built. The high priestess begins to chant something in the ancient tongue, not loudly, but under her breath, like she's unsure whether it's still allowed. When the final stroke is done, you place the razor down. Pharaoh raises his eyes to the mirror. For a moment, he doesn't blink. Then softly, he says, "So this is what I look like." He stands. The vizier steps forward with a small clay seal. It bears no symbol, just a blank disc. He hands it to Pharaoh, who crushes it in his palm. Ash falls to the floor. The scribe closes the scroll, seals it in wax, then says, "He's no longer king." And that's it. No trumpet, no drums, no morning chorus, only silence. You walk with him through the palace, side by side, barefoot in the halls he once ruled. The guards bow, but not as deeply. The servants look up but do not kneel. Outside, in the palace garden, the sun has begun to rise. Birdsong returns. The sky glows with the softest pink, the kind of color that doesn't demand attention, just gently offers beauty. He turns to you. "What will they call me now?" You smile faintly. "If they call you at all," you say, "they'll call you whole." He laughs. It's the kind of laugh that belongs to no crown, no throne, only to a man. Then he walks away into the garden, and for once, no one follows. You remain behind, the razor in your hand, not quite ready to put it away. Not yet, because you know this isn't the end of shaving kings. It's the beginning of shaving memory. You sleep, but lightly. Not the heavy kind of sleep that overtakes the body after labor, or the dreamless surrender of wine and forgetfulness. No, this is the sort of sleep that stays half tethered to waking. The kind where your ears still notice every shift in the corridor, and your mind, even in dreams, keeps reaching back for the blade you placed on the shelf. When dawn comes, it's soft. No urgent summons, no scroll, just the light. You rise with it. You move slowly, no rush. The palace isn't rushing either. It feels quieter now, but not in the suffocating way it used to. This is a new silence, one that feels earned, chosen. Your satchel still sits by the door, half packed, as if expecting you'll need it again. Your razors gleam, waiting without urgency. You wipe them anyway. Not because you're preparing for another shave, but because your hands don't quite know what else to do. Then, a knock. Soft. Respectful. Not royal. You open the door. It's a girl, barely 10, a temple messenger. She hands you a papyrus, rolled but unsealed. One line, a final name remains. You don't need to ask whose. You already know. You arrive at the small room tucked near the temple gardens. It isn't grand. No golden walls, no painted lotus borders, just plain limestone, worn smooth by generations of footsteps. The kind of room used for meditation or burial preparations. Has there. The former Pharaoh, wearing white linen again? Simple. Loose. His scalp still clean from your last shave. He sits cross-legged on a woven mat, hands folded, eyes open but far away. "I need to vanish completely," he says. "Not just from the records, from myself." You sit beside him. "You've already vanished." You reply, "Not enough." He says, "There's still something inside me that hears my old name when people speak it. Something that expects obedience, that flinches when no one bows. He looks at you. I need you to help me shave that part. You don't answer right away. You reach into your satchel, slowly, gently. This time, you don't take the blade. You take the mirror. You place it before him. He leans forward, looks, and frowns. I don't know this man. He says, you place your hand on his shoulder. You don't have to. You whisper. You just have to let him breathe. There's a silence. He closes his eyes. When he opens them, they're softer. You take the cloth, wet it in warm water, and begin to wipe his face. No hair left, no oils, just water. You clean away the dust of the past few days, the ash from the seal he crushed, the smear of ink left by the scribe's wax, the sweat of tension, and when it's done, you set the cloth aside. He exhales. I feel like I was never Pharaoh at all, he says, like it was a costume someone else wore. Then let's bury the costume, you say, together. You walk to the temple's outer courtyard. A small altar has been prepared, stone, unmarked. He places an object onto it, his old seal, the one carved with his divine name, the cobra wrapped in eternity. Then he turns to you. You saw me crowned. You shaved me to become king. And now he hesitates. You are the only one who has truly seen me come undone. You nod. No one else could have said it. You reach into your satchel and pull out a small scroll. Not an order, not a ritual. Just a list. The names of those you've shaved. Not all. Not the forbidden ones. Just the ones who asked to be remembered. You unroll it slowly. At the bottom, you add one final name. Not the divine name. Not the one sung by priests. Just his real name. The one he was born with. You pass the scroll to him. He reads it, smiles, and tosses it into the fire. Not out of anger, but as offering. Later, you return to your chamber. You unroll every cloth, inspect every blade, touch each handle as if it might speak. You think of your mentor, of the whisper he once left you with. Some razors never cut skin. You finally understand what he meant. You place the razors into a wooden box, seal it, set it beneath your bed, and you light a single lamp. Its glow is steady. For the first time in what feels like years, you lie back on your mat and let your eyes close fully. Not as a barber, not as a witness, just as a man who has seen what most are too afraid to look at. And for now, that's enough. And so now, your breathing slows. The weight of the palace fades. The names, the titles, the ritual smoke, all of it drifts further and further into the stillness behind your eyelids. You no longer feel the tension in your shoulders, nor the echo of silent footsteps in long marble halls. What remains is the quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from emptiness, but from completion. You remember the blade, the mirror, the water. You remember the final name on the scroll. And you remember that no sound followed its burning. Only peace. As your thoughts soften, so too does the world. The harsh lines of memory blur into shapes you no longer need to name. The smell of cedar and crushed lotus becomes a whisper. The sharp glint of polished metal dissolves into warm light. You rest now not as the barber, not as the one who witnessed everything that others try to forget, but simply as someone who was there, who held space, who watched power shed its skin. You let the breath deepen in your belly. You let the last flicker of firelight sway across the room. You let yourself dissolve, just a little, into the hush of a world that is, at last, quiet. And as the Nile flows on beneath the stars, you drift, you dream, and sleep takes you gently by the hand. End of story. Sweet dreams.